Sports betting brother, and hey, bring it up, and thanks for stopping by. My name is Boyd, and I'm a data analyst with OddsJam and OddsJam.com. We teach you how to bet like a sharp, and actually that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the definition, the differences, and what sharps do and are compared to squares. And I think if it affects you and you're kind of wondering where you land in all this as a sports bettor, we're really going to help you identify what you can do next in your sports betting journey. So let's get after it. Let's dig into it. All right, guys, as mentioned, today we're talking about sharps and squares, the difference between the two in the sports betting world, and you can kind of decide which one you're in or which side of things you're in and on, and I'm going to define it, go through with it, what it means to be a sharp, what it means to be a square, a lot of the actions, a lot of the things they do, a lot of things that happen being on either side of it. And again, at OddsJam and using all the tools, you can learn how to bet like a sharp very, very quickly, very, very easily, literally within the same day to get started. So if you want to be on the square side, it's probably not profitable, but again, working at being sharp is not for everybody. So let's dig into it. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into the definition of a sharp. And basically, everyone thinks a sharps is going to win more than they lose, and that's the first step. So the first step is, they win more than they lose, but that's just the basic start of it, because they're actually attacking mathematical edges and getting better odds and better payouts. Meaning, here's an example, and I'll show you another example a little bit later. Just a fundamental basic example that will stand out and be very glaring to you here in a minute. But they might get -2 on a game versus -3, so they got a better line. And then in the meantime, because they got in early, they're probably getting a lot better. Not probably, they are getting a lot better odds, and so they might be getting +140 versus -105, which is a pretty big jump and about a 45-cent difference over the course of time. That adds up a lot. So not only are they winning more games, they're getting better lines on the games, which is going to kick in more winners. And then above and beyond that, and on top of that, they're getting better payouts. So they're getting more bang for their buck on their investment. We'll go through an example here a little bit later. All right, guys, now that we talked about basically sharps winning more than they lose, getting better lines and more profits, how do they do it? What are the other characteristics of a sharp? And basically they have systems, guys. They all have systems. They have methods that they've used over the course of a long, long time that are markets driven. And there are two kinds of sports betting in decision making. You can be a top down or a bottom up, and these terms are brought up by some old veterans you hear on the internet. But basically, one of them is a statistical model, your own individual line, your own individual interpretations. Then you make your decisions based upon your research, your data. On the complete other side of that is where I stand, and I think everybody has a little bit of both in it, but I'm predominantly markets driven or top down, which I look for inefficiencies in the market. I look for edges. I look for the places that OddsJam's sending me to help me identify the side, the total, the wager, whatever it is that's probably going to be the winning wager. In addition to that, the sports book and the pricing that's going to help me get the most bang for my buck as far as an investment. So I'm getting better lines, better payouts. And again, I'll show you an example a little bit later of what that is. So those are the characteristics and some of the actions that sharps do. Whereas on the other hand, squares completely opposite. We'll talk more about the definition of how they do it in a second. All right, guys, here we go to a page, just taking a look at the OddsJam, layout and presentation. And basically, this is all market data analysis tools that you can use to help you identify where you want to be in a particular wager. So it helps you identify the true north, which is the OddsJam perfect line, as well as some of the other market making books, and also the advantages in pricing at all the other locations. This is a huge tool, and you have some free trials set up to get started with it, but there's a ton of education, a ton of ways to use this blindly. You don't have to know anything about sports betting at all in order to use this tool. So that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. You can be a sharp and not even be on the same page as far as some of the bottom up or the model building type sports bettors. I just made some notes here and kind of found an example. This is what a bottom up or a person that's not necessarily watching the market for the inefficiencies is doing. They're trying to pick the sides, the totals, the games based on their own research, based on their own information. And I got to tell you, I did this for years and years and years. It was pretty ineffective over the long term. And there's really nothing that the books don't know that's already priced into the game. So if you think you have an edge or you think you have a model that's going to beat the odds makers, that's awesome. Good luck. However, you can actually get the information from the markets by doing it the complete opposite way, and it's much more efficient, much more profitable, much more successful. So again, these bottoms up type cappers are going to watch lots of film, lots of studying. They look for all kinds of things that are already baked into the price anyway. So I highly recommend not going that route, or certainly just using it as a gauge, sort of a temperature gauge, just sort of information at hand to kind of understand maybe why the markets did move. That's why you'd want to have a little bit of an exposure to this side of things as far as capping is, because then you can understand the reasoning of why a market moved and whether it moved too much or not enough. But that's really about the only reason why you'd be using some of these types of tools. All right, now further to drive this home a little further, I did sort of a quick page here. This is 10 games. All right, so we have player A and player B. 10 games. They each bet $100 on each of the same games. All right. And what I mentioned earlier is the sharps always getting, better odds, right? So you can see here, this first game, and this is a scenario of this first one. Both players went 10-0. Okay. You can see here, both players won each game. The square and the sharp. The sharp still came out about $107.69 ahead, because of the odds line. So for example, this one here, you got minus 105 with the sharp. The square got minus 115. This one here, you got plus 120. The square got, even money at 100. This one here, minus 130 for the sharp, and the square paid minus 145. So you can see here the pricing, even though the lines are the same, because of the timing of the market, the timing is such that like an OddsJam is going to show you when to get in, a good opportunity to get in. You can always hedge and back out of it later, but this is what's profitable about using this tool, is you can get in early, but the prices are good and the prices are better, and the market's telling you which way to pretty much lean and go to. So again, that scenario is pretty cool. As a more realistic scenario, let's say the sharp went 6-4, let's say the square went 6-4, and you can see here another $83.32 difference, again, because the price of what these guys are getting, so they didn't, who's going to go 10-0? Not very many people, but it happens. Let's say realistically they went 6-4, pretty realistic, right? Probably the most realistic situations we're going to show you next, and it really is happening the majority of the time, so let's actually go through that. But you can see here the money difference between squares and sharps for those particular reasons that I mentioned before. Now this is the most realistic day-to-day explanation of kind of how it breaks down. You can see here, player A is the sharp. They went 6-4. They won $266.15 because here's their lines, here's their wins and losses, here's their payouts, and here's how much they profited after that 10-game window going 6-4 based on their lines and their odds. Now, what's more realistic is the square again actually ended up losing $32.17, and they went 5-5. Okay, they went 5-5, lost money because again they got a worse line. You can see here, square is typically going to get worse, and they're at minus 3.5. The game ended by 3. They didn't. They lost this game. They win this game. It's always that close and that tight. So you can see here just one simple game, one simple explanation of how this happens, which is the realistic version of sharps and squares. Why the squares are always losing, sharps are always coming out ahead. Even if it's a minor or a small profit at the end of the week, end of the month, that's the difference in how it stacks up and adds up quickly. I thought this was kind of funny, so I just copied and pasted some of the different explanations and definitions of squares. It talks about how they're recreational, they don't understand markets, they get misled by the media. True. Their own research on shit doesn't matter. It's so true. I mean, you guys, I hate to say it, but if you're in your mom's basement and you have a model, good job. How you doing? Are you profitable? There's going to be some people out there that are screaming, yes, I am. You're a nut. And so be it. But anyway, very common mistakes include inconsistent betting style, adjusting your wagers based on emotion, wagering last minute when all the value squeezed out of the market, neglecting the need to track all your history of your wagers and kind of see how you're doing, where you're doing good at, things like that, and then just the emotions for these gimmick bets that are out there that have a negative EV. But the one I laughed at the most is the equivalent of a square in poker lingo would be a donk or a fish. So maybe we should start calling it donks or fishes. It's much different than the shark that we showed earlier. But again, they just overlook key numbers. They don't understand key numbers. They don't understand the heuristics, the decision-making process, and understanding the systems and the methods of what you're looking for, when you're looking for it. Different times of the week in NFL, you have different limits raised throughout the course of the week. So the market gradually gets hammered out. And, certain people don't know when to hit that or how to hit that wager based on the correlations and things like that. So that's what it is like to be a square. All the different methods and ideas the squares have is what the sports books prey on. They're taking advantage of you being a square. So if you're doing it just for recreational purposes, that's awesome. But if you're trying to get out of that deficit, you need to start learning how to bet like a sharp, use the tools like a sharp, and understand the markets. All right, guys, there you go. Hope that makes a lot of sense. Hopefully that makes some I don't know, directional means for you to identify where you want to go and where you're at in your current situation. Again, really easy to get sharp, get quick using the tools and making the decisions, the choices, and doing the things that are necessary to not be a square, because if you are a square, the books are going to take the money from you quickly. And again, free trial at OddsJam. Get all the details there. Also, leave us any questions or other topics you might want to take a look at and have me cover. So happy to have you listen, take a watch, and we'll be back with more soon.